Welcome, everyone. This is Sandra Alexei with my personal muse and Game Changer. And what we have today is a game changer. I'm here with Matthew Ashdown, and he is a genius with the gene keys. And I met Matthew probably a year and a half ago, maybe Matthew 2 years ago, and have worked with him and have really jumped into the self-discovery process working with gene keys. For those of you that are kind of new to it, I do astrology, but Game Changer was a book, and it's all about self-discovery. And this is part of the Venus series that I'm doing. And the reason I'm doing it, and Matthew, we've never rehearsed anything, and there might be some things he's not quite sure of because this is pretty deep. Okay. Been waiting for this one. But
yeah, you kind of set it up that way. I'm kind of expecting it. So
yeah,
I might take some pauses while I download any kind of input.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Okay. And the reason this is so powerful, and we were going to do it, and I kind of listened to the universe, and it just worked out today because Pluto, which is the planet of transformation, which has been nailing everybody since 2007 and 2008 and moves in 2023. And this year is a big year. Obviously, we know there's lots of change, but it just went retrograde yesterday. Okay, so now we're going to be taken within, and we've got 6 months to do a lot of self-discovery work, and everybody's been coupled up, and a lot of people are going crazy and whatever, but this is a great time, okay? And it's a great time if you look at the video that I have on YouTube. It talks about working with your shadow. We're going to talk, I'll get Matthew to explain that to you. The next thing is Venus, which is the planet of relationships. Okay, it's about love, it's about value, it's about worth, it's about finances. But when you talk about Venus, everybody thinks love. Okay, so Venus is more on the feminine, and then we have Mars, which is the masculine. Well, it goes retrograde May 13th for 4 months. Okay, that means you've got to go in and do self-discovery. So we've got a big portal, a window here to do that, okay? And the interesting thing on June 30th, which is partway in between it, and for those of you that have a calendar, I'd be writing that down because there's going to be a huge conjunction with Pluto and Jupiter, which expands it. So it's just gonna like poof, that day, the day before or whatever, you're gonna go, oh my God, I get it. Okay, something is just going to happen for you. And so this is doing self-discovery at a very deep soul level. And I'm going to be working with a lot of past lives. I have a new one, and I do the nodal work for past lives. And so Matthew, I really enjoy working with you, and Matthew is a beautiful soul that's very deep and very intuitive. And he has a really good handle on the gene keys. And I'm taking the Venus workshop that he does. And I would suggest anybody maybe to start thinking about it or have a reading with him. So today it's all about relationships, and it's about sexuality. And the bottom line is, Matthew, when it comes to it, we all have, our first relationship is with ourselves. And then what I'm realizing, when we meet other people, we have things to work through. And there's an ancestral, okay, past life, karma. And then there's a past life personally, okay, which we have to do. So it can be very confusing. And then it's this lifetime. One thing Game Changer was written about was because relationships are going through such a trial, okay? Everybody's pointing the finger, everybody's a victim, everybody's codependent, then we have energy vampires, and we have a lot of things, okay? But it's really interesting, what's really come up the last couple of weeks that I've worked with everybody is it's like sexual addiction, okay? And so it's very interesting that, and it seems to be on the woman's side more, okay, on the woman's side more that, and she's feeling really uncomfortable because the male is it's either porn or it's they're getting involved online. And the interesting thing, listen to, I don't know if you've seen this wise guru, his name is Sanguru. He just said yesterday that people are having a challenge with it because, especially now with their lockdown, we've got more domestic violence now and we've got everything. That's why I thought this would be really good to talk about, because people really have to face themselves in this closed space. Okay, so the domestic violence is up. There's more drinking or whatever. But he said, and it was just yesterday, I listened to him, he said, with people being able to go on the internet and go on Facebook and that type of thing, he said, they're finding that, especially right now, that another person in their space irritates them. Interesting, okay? So it's about space. And he said, what we're finding is they don't want to have that relationship as much anymore. Like a woman said, I just want my house, and I just want him to be here when I need to have something fixed or to pay the bill. Okay, so this is interesting. And then the next thing they said is, he said, what's happening, people can just say, I can connect with anybody that I want to connect with, and then I can just shut the computer and I can have my own space. Okay, and so I really am a good student. You know that, Matthew. When I get into with the gene keys, I'm really working it, and I'm really all about relationships and that type of thing. And there's something called the battle of sexes, okay, that he talked about. And it's like there is a lot of discord, okay. Could the discord be because, and I'm just going to ask you the question, and maybe you can go from there. Could the discord be that we're moving from a really third dimensional to a fifth dimensional, seventh dimension? So we're getting a different level of consciousness as to, say, the primal lust and sex and that type of thing. Okay, the lust, the infatuation, are we getting realer? And I'm not saying I think that sex is beautiful, okay, and intimacy is beautiful. But maybe people are a little bit confused about it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there is this transmutation happening to the human species right now. And it was interesting what you were saying about people wanting to, they're fine on the internet, but then they don't want to be in the space with another person, because that can be, that's quite telling, isn't it? It really shows us what kind of, because are we having deep, intimate conversations online, or do they go just so far? And then if we don't want that other person in our space, what is that? What's that? Because what I've noticed is that there are people, I know some people that were going to be splitting up before all of this happened, and now they're living together. I know other people that had split up, but they're together now because their kids they both want to see the kids. And so they're living together. And so it's, I think we can numb out. We can numb out through technology. We can numb out through all these different things. But we're being asked right now, I feel like, to be with others, to be present to others, to connect with others. And I do feel like it's through that. And so some of it is going to show up as, like you said, people surfing the net for porn, that kind of thing, because, that's something that is, it's a way for people to have that fulfillment in a way without the risks associated with intimacy. Because underneath it all, really, there's that fear of intimacy in many ways, the fear of people. In Gene Keys, if anyone's familiar with the Gene Keys, this is the 59th Gene Key in a lot of ways. We're talking about this. It's not so much the battle of sexes in this sense, but this is about, we have this sexual energy that moves through us. And so often, and I've been a yoga practitioner before I was ever into the Gene Keys work. And, it was all about working with that that energy, because that sexual energy transmuted becomes a spiritual energy, right? And so it's you know, do we act on those things? So looking at things like looking on porn and things like that as being this kind of it can be an outward addiction, so that we don't go in and look deeper. And so, you know, there's a lot of judgment around porn, so people are in shame around it and things like that. But if we could take out, if we could move through, if we could transmute that, we can see the addiction for what it is, which is really, it's not about being bad or morally wrong. We're simply preventing ourselves from going deeper. Facebook is the same. We interact on Facebook and we have these conversations that are safe, often with strangers, which is why we can see people having conversations that are, you know, they would never talk to people in their proximity in that way. But the fact is that it's the people in the space that it's like the universe has said, none of it's by accident, right? The universe has said, you're in the home with this person, you can grow through this, you can become closer through this, you can expand through this. And so I feel like that, yeah, it's like we have this opportunity now to become more intimate, to grow in relationship. And not, you'd mentioned something about, you know, people, oh, I just want somebody around and to fix the stuff and then they can go, right? Yeah. That becomes that's just fueling that codependency, isn't it?
Right.
And really, it's like there's also the independency, and to an extent, independent. We can be dysfunctionally independent. Robert Holden talks about this dysfunctional independence. There's a healthy independence, and there's a dysfunctional independence, which is like I don't need anyone. Which is actually really, when you look deeper, it's actually it's an expression of codependency. But it wouldn't want to be seen in that light, right? So it's like in time we move to this interdependency where it's like we're both individual beings. Like me and my wife have worked through some things in our relationship, and I'm sure we'll have other things. But we're both very individual people, but we also come together and in support of one another. So it's like we're two fulfilled people by ourselves, and then when we come together, there's that fulfillment. But we had to dig deep. We've had to go into some of our healing, a lot of healing. There's been a lot of healing. And so in my own journey, I had to take responsibility for what I was feeling. I can't project, I can't blame, right? Or I might project and I might blame, but as soon as I'm aware of that, I've got something that I can do in this situation. So I do feel that this is time. It's just like, whatever that distraction might be, it could be the news, endless news cycles. We've all got something that can be that thing that can distract us from looking in, from numbing out, and feel when we can have that courage to look in there. And if it is about our sexuality, or if it is about any other aspect of relationship, where we can have that courage to go in there and look in there, we can transmute it and we can transform it. And so oftentimes that excess, that energy that there's guys might want to go out and be with lots of women, or women have their, the different ways we experience it. But it's like, sometimes that we can actually transmute that into something creative in the world too. You've mentioned him before, and I remember reading this years ago. It was in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where he talks about the transmutation of sexual energy into creative energy, right? So it becomes, we transmute that so that it can be the fuel to create a new, to write a book or to create something in your world. And so it's, we've been seeing, we viewed ourselves collectively, individually, it's very person to person, but it was almost like victims of our sexuality or victims of other people's sexuality.
Right.
And I feel like eventually we move to this place, and I think that's what you're kind of hinting at, where humanity will come to this place where we've sublimated sexuality. That doesn't mean that, that we avoid sexuality.
No.
It's like, it means that it's been sublimated to such an extent that it's not the thing that people are thinking about all the time. And, but there's always going to be that as we're growing and evolving. In the gene keys, there's a gene key in your chart called the attraction gene key. And that is the one that's where your sexual wound is centered. So for everybody, there could be a different way that it can sort of play out in your world, so to speak. And so there's a lot to be learned, to be gleaned from contemplating that, because not only do those desires for sexuality, they can also relate to our desires for other experiences in life too. And so our attraction key in the gene keys is like, I have a purpose. I'm here to fulfill a purpose in my life. And in order to fulfill that purpose in my life, I attract certain people to me. Now, that doesn't mean all the relationships are always healthy or always easy, but they are what help me to awaken into my gift, and into my purpose in the world. So a lot of times people will come to me and say, oh, I don't know what my purpose is, and I'm frantically looking to find a sense of purpose. And your purpose is right in front of you. It's the person sitting across from you at the dinner table. It's the person, it's the kids that are in your space with you. It's wherever you find yourself in this moment. It's like asking ourselves, okay, how can I be of the greatest service to humanity right now? And it could be, teaching, expressing values, raising your frequency, and raising the frequency of the community around you, your home, right? And then as we reach out, as things start to unravel here, as we start to expect, I feel like we're all cocooning in. We've all got this opportunity to really dig deep and heal, so that when we emerge from it, we're emerging into the world as less wounded people, as more heart-centered people. And so whatever things that we've been avoiding in our life, in this proximity, they're going to come up. And so we can turn to alcohol, we can turn to food, we can turn to any number of things to numb it out. And, this isn't about, again, it's not about judging ourselves for this. It's recognizing, just catching ourselves. Am I doing this because this is truly nourishing me at this time? Or am I doing it because I'm numbing out of some deeper feeling? And I feel like this time right now is really poking that.
Actually, Matthew, it is really poking it. And the bottom line is, if we look at it, we've been given this window, okay? And we're given this window for a reason. And we have to understand that we are co-creators, and we have a dharma, and we have a karma, okay? And so when we're on track, when we're off track, we know it, because we get hit. For every action, there's a consequence, okay? Because the universe, the divine, the source wants us to find our purpose and be ourselves and be like butterflies. I think for you, Matthew, that's what I've always said. Like, we're in the chrysalis, and then to become our butterfly. We each are our own butterfly. You're all a different flower. And the bottom line is, with sexuality, I think there's so much shame that has been put on it. Okay, that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. You have to understand, collectively, we're going through a huge revelation and a huge cleansing. And what's been coming up? The Epstein, the trafficking, the pedophilia, everything, okay? And so it's right in everybody's face, okay? And so as in a relationship, I believe that the first thing is you become a good friend, okay? So as friends, you're going to help each other's soul evolve. And if you're doing that, okay, and that's the karma thing. And this is what I'm so excited about, Matthew, because I'll do one the next week, is that we have that karma. And so, and you find it in the gene keys. And I've worked with people, it's like there's you and Nicole, okay, your wife, but then it's your mom and dad and your sibling, then it's her mom and dad and her siblings. So now you come together. So now you can imagine what happens instead of blaming. And I've done a couple of really great readings where I've said to the person, what did they give you? What was your gift? Okay. And as soon as they can say, oh my God, this was my gift, like I became responsible, I am who I am today because of that, and there's no anger or whatever, okay? It's like, can you see the gift, okay? And that's been very healing for me, okay, to look back and do my past life work and say, and that's with the nodes, and that's in the Venus. And I said to you, I think it's very prevalent if you say you take your Gene Keys and Nicole's, your profiles, and you look together and you see what's happening. But I say to people, it's always good to go first for yourself to see where you are in the Venus sequence, and then to pull somebody else in. But you could probably do a session where you can figure out what it is, so where they can start working. Because the bottom line is, to me, it's about solutions. Right now,
Yeah.
we're about solutions, Matthew.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, that's exactly it. Is when you do your Gene Keys body of work, I can focus on this myself. It's like my wife wasn't into the Gene Keys, isn't hugely into the Gene Keys to the same extent that I am. She's intrigued by it, and she's definitely learned stuff from it. But that, you know, it's like, that's the beauty of doing any kind of work, is the other person doesn't necessarily have to do the work alongside you.
No.
If you change your frequency inside of yourself, if your frequency shifts, the other person may not be able to put a name on it, may not know what's happened, may not be able to describe what's happening, but they can feel something. I was just talking to somebody who she was noticing that somebody that she's been with, her partner, was starting to turn to pot, another way of numbing out, right? And I feel it's because she's doing, or I'm not going to say this is it, but it's like, it could be because she's doing this work, raising her frequency, expanding, right? And as she's expanding, he's noticing this, but he's not doing anything right now and so it's like suddenly all these feelings are coming up, or this experience, emotions, and it's like, yeah, I don't know what this is, so I'm going to numb it. And so he would take the, you know, because that's safe, that numbs that out. And so we've all been guilty of this in some way, shape, or form at some point in our life. But there is definitely something to that. If, you know, I'm looking at a couple this weekend, actually. I'm looking at their Gene Keys charts. And the first thing I look for is, what Gene Keys do they have in common? If I can see two Gene Keys, or if I can see a Gene Key that they both have in their chart, then it's very likely that the shadow of that Gene Key is where they keep coming up against each other, right? And where there's an opportunity for both to embody the gift, but only when they take personal responsibility, right? It's like, it's not about their fault. It's not even about my fault. That's not what responsibility is. It's about, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Like you mentioned the piece about shame around sexuality. And so we either act on that shame and we keep doing things to feel shame about, or we face that shame, we acknowledge that shame, accept that that's what we feel, and then we can transmute it. And that's when shifts happen in relationships. For me, in my relationships, it's always, and not just with my wife, but relationships elsewhere in my life, there would be this sense of guilt, and I didn't know what it was for, or I didn't know why I was holding on to it. But it was just noticing it. It was accepting that's what I felt. And as the guilt diminishes, as I transmute the guilt, as I transform it, the relationship, our relationship shifts, not because of something I'm doing, but because of the way I'm vibrating. It's like my frequency is shifting.
Right.
So it's like I've taken ownership of the guilt. Nobody else can take ownership of that guilt for me. I've taken ownership of that guilt. I'm noticing, I'm feeling it. I don't necessarily accept it straight away, because when I see that guilt, you know, we're not going to necessarily accept it straight away. But when we can accept it, then we begin to shift, and then we begin to accept ourselves more. And as we accept ourselves more, there are shifts. There are shifts that happen. So that's not saying that if you do your work on your Gene Keys, or if you do your work with your astrology, if you do the self-discovery, that you're going to stay with the same person. No. But it does mean that if you are doing this work and you raise your frequency and the other person is committed to theirs, there could be a breakthrough in the relationship. There could be a breakthrough in that relationship. Now, if people are alone, because this is some people who are at this time and they're home alone, right? They're not in this kind of situation. So maybe this kind of scenario doesn't resonate for them. These are still opportunities for healing our past relationships.
Right.
So that, you know, it's like, if we want to emerge into this world as things start to, as we start to move around more and more again, and then we start to meet new people, it's like, wow, if we took this time and did this work now, just imagine who we'd be welcoming into our life, the possibilities that we could be welcoming into our life. Because it's like, you know, the gene keys, a lot of people don't want to look at the shadows because it's dark and, you know, it's like, ooh, I don't want to go there. But what you realize when you go through the gene keys is that there's a light through there. You don't find the gifts in your life. You don't find your purpose by avoiding the shadows. You find your purpose going through the shadows. And as you go through the shadows, these gifts that you have to bring to the world just start to naturally emerge. And so, you know, people will talk. I was sharing this with somebody earlier. It's like I heard somebody saying that the only thing to fear is fear itself. It's like, no, because that can still keep us trapped in our shadows.
That's right.
It's like anywhere there's a fear is perpetuating a shadow. So let's befriend our fears.
Right.
Let's befriend them, because if we befriend our fears, then they can transform us.
Right.
Our fears are transforming us. And so when I first did shadow work, I would do shadow work and I was hoping that things would get better. But I didn't, you know, what the gene keys shifted for me, and I think it helped you in this way and others too, is like every gene key, there's a shadow and a gift. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, because I used to think the shadow, well, if I feel shame, then the opposite of that is love, right? This is more like, you know, let's take the 59th gene key. The shadow is dishonesty, right? So we don't like dishonesty. We don't like it in politics. We don't like it in our relationships. We don't like it, you know, and yet at the same time, it's something inherent in human nature. It's like it's programmed into our genes. And so it's about accepting where we've been dishonest, because the way people are dishonest we're dishonest about what we really want to become.
Right.
We're honest about how we really feel about a certain situation. We're dishonest about the fact that this drink that I'm going to drink, you know, it's numbing out somewhere that I'm not being honest with myself. So when we can see that, when we can accept dishonesty as something within the human collective, then we can begin to shift it, because the gift of that gene key is intimacy. Intimacy. So it's like the shadow is dishonesty, but it's simply a lower frequency expression of the gift. So it's like the reason I have intimacy and I can create intimacy is because I've accepted, I've transmuted all those places inside of me where I'm dishonest. And I've been able and willing to go in there such that I will let somebody see into me see. And so that 59th gene key is a great example. And because that one has a lot to do with the, you know, honesty about our sexuality has been challenging in life, right? Honesty about our sexual feelings to other people. It doesn't mean we have to act on them, but if we're honest about what we feel, I can feel a sexual attraction to someone, but if I act on it, I'm in a married relationship, right? So I have a sense of loyalty there, and so if there's any of that kind of, you know, if I see a poster or something on TV or something like that, and it triggers anything, then I have to just be honest with what I feel, and out of that can emerge some new potential. But it's that difference of moving through it internally versus acting on it.
Right.
And so I can create greater intimacy in my relationship when I am honest with myself first.
Matthew, so that was the big thing, because last year, from a numerology point of view, we were asked to be more transparent and more authentic, okay? And I've joined a women's group this morning, and we talk a lot about authenticity. And I have always said that if you're not, emotional honesty is so important, because you hurt someone if you can't be. But somebody said, well, you can hurt them if you're going to be honest, because those are the people that are the people pleasers. Okay. And a really good thing, it always comes to mind, is that movie Runaway Bride. Okay. I mean, it was Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. She tried to get married 4 or 5 times, and she would run instead of getting married. And her and Richard Gere got together. And the bottom line was, every man that she was with, it was about the eggs. Okay. And it's so funny because I had a girlfriend that was the same way. She'd go for breakfast with a man, and he'd say, what would you like? And she'd go, well, what are you going to have? And he'd go, eggs Benny. I'll have the same. No, I'm going to have a ham and eggs. I'll have the same. Okay. I'll have scrambled eggs. So it's about being able to say what you really need, what you really want, and not having to think that you're hurting somebody, because you're hurting yourself and you're hurting them. And I can remember there's somewhere about intimacy, it says, like, I believe that you and Nicole have a devotion. I think he says that word in there, and she really devoted to the other person. And I think that's really, really powerful. And when you talk about it, Carl Jung has said, and that's within the astrology, in the nodes, the gold is in the shadow. And you'll never get to the light until you go through the shadow and you work it. And that's where I say, then you are the butterfly. So anybody out there that wants to become a beautiful butterfly, we don't know what color you are or anything, but you have this 4 months, 6 months, because the Venus sequences you're talking about, Matthew, and right now what we're going through with Pluto, with transformation, and with the Venus, our planet Venus going retrograde, is like we're going within, we're re-examining, we're reassessing, we're and it has to do with Gemini, so it's about communication. They have to be really careful because Mercury can be the trickster. So don't trick yourself. Okay, take this time to really go deep and really do, I would say, really do the work, Matthew. And they can contact you. You can tell them how, and they can get a hold of me, but I'll put it in the hashtags too, how they can get a hold of you. And then you have your sequence, you have your sessions, you do your private sessions. And so if you want to say that, and then we'll kind of finish off.
Yeah, private sessions where ultimately with the Gene Keys, I'm a guide for the Gene Keys and I'm a facilitator. You're ultimately the one, as you understand the Gene Keys, as you understand that it's like nobody can accept your shadows for you, just like nobody can accept your gifts for you. So it's like, I can be that guide, Sandra, we can be the guides with the Gene Keys. And that's what I do, is I facilitate that kind of guide so people can find the truth for themselves. And so we do that, yes, in one-on-one sessions, and then some people prefer the group sessions because there's the engagement, there's other people's personalities. You can study this stuff online by yourself, but a lot of the people who come to work with me in the groups are people who learn from others, who love to hear other people share their stories and their insights, because those stories and insights mean something to them. So yeah, we're starting the Venus sequence just this coming week, and there is room for more people there for sure. And it is, like you said, when you talk about the planetary alignments right now, that's what it feels like. It feels like it's a very important time. Mm-hmm. We want to go outside. We want to be in nature. We should be able to do some of that. And we can still use this opportunity to slow down just a little bit, to be still, to be with ourselves, so that when we do emerge into the world, we can continue to co-create something better than the one we're leaving behind. And, so that we can all be individually empowered, so that we can move forward into a time when the idea of the battle of the sexes can be put behind us, so that we can be in relationships where there's no battle, it can feel like that as you go through the shift, but we can emerge into this time when, even with those differences inside of ourselves, because whenever there's that polarity between male and female, or anywhere in any kind of relationship, whenever there's that polarity, it can feel like there's that. But it's we're waking up into a a new vision for humanity. We are, as you say, the chrysalis. We're in the chrysalis at this time, and we're going to emerge from this, the butterfly. And of course, you know, if we choose, Sandra, you really stress it, it's like this next 6 months, 8 months are really important. And so, you know, we can do this. I feel like anyone that's gone through the Venus sequence before has actually chosen the easier path. It seems to outsiders looking in, it can look like, oh my gosh, that's intense what you guys are doing. But now people who haven't done that work are experiencing it even more intensely, I feel. I feel those of us that have gone through the work or continue to work on it are actually, we can find the transformation in the small, even mundane experiences. It doesn't have to be something big out in the world there. So yes, one-on-one sessions is one way that I can explore that with you as an individual. And then group sessions are a fantastic way to grow with others as part of a community.
Right. And I just want to end it with Matthew saying, I'm telling you right now, this is the transmutation. This is a birthing process. And as a mother, I mean, the men are not going to get it, but any woman out there, I mean, when you're birthing, when that child is being born, I can remember when I was in, there was women screaming and they were hollering at their husband. It's like, oh my God, stop. I'm never going to have another kid, blah, blah, blah. And that's the way we can feel right now, because this is the birthing process. So my advice to you is to sit with this and see if there's anything here that we can assist you with, okay, to help you through that, because it's not going to get any easier. You're only going to be able to numb out, Matthew. They can only numb out for so long. This is what this is meant from this time to this time, okay? And so I would really say, and it's about peace. And I just have to read this one thing it says, human beings are unconsciously addicted, interesting, to conflict concerning relationships until your frequency rises above the emotional gravitation of the opposite sex. You'll never know peace. Okay, and I think that comes from Richard Rudd's book.
Yeah, that is.
It's like just to find that peace, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And thank you so much, Matthew. And
thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being a part of our energy exchange here. And again, you can go online and you can order Game Changer, and this is going to be a Game Changer year. And then you can see if you want to get a hold of us. And I hope that you would like this and share this with your friends. And if you have somebody that's going through some emotional, sometimes it's just a relationship with themselves. Other times it's a couple that you may know. Share this with them. We're here to help wherever anybody is. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.